Tell me all about your latest obsession. Are you a fan? Got guilty pleasures? Yeah, your confessions. What the hype? What the hype? Take me from fan to stand. What the hype? What the hype? Ooh, what's the hype? Yeah. What the hype?
Welcome back to What the Hype podcast. I'm Pam, and I'll be your host today. I'm also here with Andrew. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
Hello, doing well. Sporting my Barbie hat. I am Knuff.
Love. You're always Knuff for me.
Oh, thank you so much. She loves me.
Only today.
Wow. Okay, I'm leaving.
Kidding. I love you every day. You know this. And we also have a lot of love for our special guest. So we have Kaylin of Long Live Taylor podcast joining us today. And our plan is to tackle this idea of the song of the summer, which is something that we all kind of grew up with, but is maybe or maybe not becoming obsolete. And Kaylin is the perfect guest to join us for this episode because not only is she a podcaster herself, but she also works in the music industry. So welcome to the show, Kaylin. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I actually wanted to say this right before we jumped on the call, but I know you, Pam. You were a guest on the Long Live Taylor podcast, and It was so much fun having you. But Andrew, this is my first time meeting you, but I feel like I've known you for forever because my aunt is Morgan, who's been a guest on your show, I believe, a few times, and she's the host of That Nerd Thing pod, and she's obsessed with Andrew. So I'm like, oh, I know him already. I'm like, I already know him. But then you're like, nice to meet you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know him. I just know all the stories Morgan always says. So
yeah, Morgan can fill you in on me. Maybe she probably knows a little too much about me based on what she hears on Millennial. But yeah, we love Morgan and we're excited to have you on. And you're, like I said to you when we hopped on the call here, you're the perfect guest to have on this type of episode. So we're excited.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been in the music industry for, I want to say like 6 years now. I used to work in radio, so I was on the air for a little bit. And then I ended up in a music director role, which was like programming the music on the radio stations. And then
so
currently I work. Thanks. It was really fun. I would get a lot of calls from labels like asking to play their music. And I was like, oh, actually, I think I'd rather be on this side of the industry, pushing and advocating for the artist rather than being the person saying no to all the time. So I've actually been at a record label for over 3 years now in Nashville. I do marketing and I do a lot of social media stuff directly with the artists. So I spend a lot of time helping them market TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and things like that. So I'm very excited to talk about the song of the summer.
Yeah. Work in the music industry and you're in Nashville. Like, damn, like you're living the music dream,
girl. Yeah. Honestly,
Thanks.
I'm just hearing you talk about this. And I knew a little bit about your background because I've guested on your podcast, Long Live Taylor, before. But I'm like, my producer brain's already going like, man, we talk about some of this stuff all the time on our sister podcast, Millennial, which Andrew and I do with Laura. It's like, maybe we got to get Kaylin on there next time we have questions because, I know a little bit about music, but in the music industry, but I definitely probably don't know as much as you. Like you're living in it. So yeah, we're excited to have you.
Well, and I'll also observe that Kaylin has a guitar behind her. And from what I understand, it is illegal to not have a guitar in every home in Nashville, right? So that's why that's there. Or do you play that thing?
I do play it, believe it or not.
Very
like everyone else here in the city. But yeah, it is funny because every place I go to has one, even if you're not a musician. I have friends that just have them hanging for decor. But yeah, I also like to write music myself.
Well, like I said at the top of the show, we want to talk about Song of the Summer today. We're in August. We're kind of recording this at the beginning of August, and this episode's probably going to come out towards the end of August, which is kind of, when summer's winding down. So this is kind of like the perfect time to chat about this subject. And to kick things off, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background for what Song of the Summer even means officially. Obviously, on face value, it's pretty straightforward. But in researching for this episode, I actually learned some pretty cool fun facts about this big pop culture moment that we kind of look towards every year around this time. So, according to Wikipedia, the official definition of Song of the Summer is a track that dominates both culturally and commercially in the United States. And that traditionally is happening from May through the beginning of September. And fun fact about that, the actual term only really came into popularity in the 1990s. And the early 2000s is when we really started to kind of see the idea of this take off in the sense of artists chasing Song of the Summer status and it becoming a competition among artists. And this was definitely fueled by mass media, places like MTV and Billboard as well. So it's funny because now when you look up, like the Billboard charts, if you're a chart nerd like me, you'll see Song of the Summer charts going back, decades. And in reality, it didn't really matter so much until it became this big culture moment in the 90s. I think that it's like, this is particularly interesting because that probably means that the three of us grew up like anticipating maybe what might be Song of the Summer. Do you all remember this being a big deal when you were growing up or like in your teens and your college years?
I don't really remember like looking forward to the Song of the Summer until recently, like with TikTok promoting it every year, which is something we'll probably get into way later, just like how prominent TikTok is. But I don't really remember like growing up listening, like waiting, but I remember there being a Song of the Summer, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure.
And then so it was really interesting going through the list of the Song of the Summer the past few years. A lot of them that stuck out to me were like from the early 2000s, and I'm 27, so like in 2001 I was like 4. So I'm like, how are these songs the ones that are sticking out to me the most? Like Drops of Jupiter, Hanging by a Moment, Vanessa Carlton, 1,000 Miles, Matchbox 20, Unwell. So it's really interesting to me that those are so prevalent in my mind, even though I was so young.
It's because they're iconic.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I grew up really close to Morgan, and she's a few years older than me. So I feel like I listened to what she was listening to. So that could have had an influence on it. But
yeah, I was going to ask if you had any older siblings, because I think a lot of times that really influences your pop culture too. But also, this is probably like the music our parents were listening to. Like, we don't like to think of our parents being cool like that, but they were probably listening to Top 40 radio. So
Yeah.
I think it makes sense that a lot of that seeped into your childhood, even if you weren't like, actively paying attention to what was hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And back in, let's say, 2005 or 2003, when my parents were driving me around, I think they would turn on Top 40 radio because they knew that's what the kids might be more into, or that's what we were asking to listen to in the car. It was either that or 1029 WMGK, the classic rock station in my family minivan. But Kaylin, you mentioned several songs there, and I definitely remember all of them being songs of the summer, but I don't remember earlier than that them being labeled as such. And it might just be a result of the rise of the internet. I guess there's more talk about Song of the Summer online. And I say internet, but I guess what I really mean is social media. There's more talk about that. You've seen more talk about that over the last 10, 15 years or so.
Yeah.
But then again, Top 40 Radio could have leaned into the idea of Song of the Summer too. And from my recollection, I don't really remember them being like, here's the Song of the Summer.
No, I realized that, like, I think most of my recollections are, kind of like in my late teens, early 20s, when you would be out with friends. So you would hear songs. And I realize now, looking back, because music is kind of like, a time capsule. It's like, oh yeah, I was like, this song was playing everywhere when I was here, I was there. In recent years, I like, that's how I mark like years of Comic-Con, because we used to go to San Diego Comic-Con every year. And it's like, oh yeah, that was a song that was like all over the gas lamp. Or, when we used to go to Harry Potter conventions too, I think that's like, because that was like peak summertime. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that song was playing everywhere. So it makes sense.
Yeah. I have a friend who makes a Spotify playlist every year of all of his favorite songs. And he's done it like all the way back the past 10 years. And he's like, when we listen to it, he's like, oh, this is when this happened. This is when this happened. It like makes you remember what you were going through.
I do that loosely, like usually like every month. I'll just like dump songs that I like onto a Spotify playlist, and then I just don't delete them.
Wow.
And sometimes I do it by seasons, but
I like that idea, but I also will call out that Spotify has a Your Summer Rewinds playlist that automatically gets
Yeah.
updated with all your songs of the
Yeah.
summer. I love that. And to your point,
Me too.
Kaylin, and your friend's point, like hearing those old songs really brings you back to certain moments in the summer, or like you said, Pam, with Comic-Con or other summer events.
well, let's dive a little bit deeper here and chat about some of the key characteristics that a song has to have in order to qualify as a contender for Song of the Summer. There are different ways people kind of go about deciding what the Song of the Summer should be, but I kind of put together the main 4 elements that really seem to overlap here. So the first is that there should be universal awareness about the track. The second is that it should be a viral phenomenon. So obviously that is like a prerequisite that's a little bit newer because things weren't going viral necessarily in the same way in the early 2000s, for example. It's a song you hear everywhere you go. So there's my point about like remembering things from Comic-Con. And that's pretty much it. But I wanted to ask you all if there's anything else missing that we would kind of like add to this list that you think that, should be a characteristic.
I think first and foremost for me, it evokes a feeling during the summer or even when you listen to it in future summers. And it's a song you want to listen to while driving out in the warmer, sunnier weather. And I think it's a song you want to listen to with friends in the backyard. Maybe it's a good pregame song before going out for the night too. Like there's just a lot of happy memories with summer songs for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good point because I grew up in Florida, in South Florida, where it's always the same season. So I wouldn't have necessarily thought about that until I moved to Tennessee. And you can definitely feel a shift in energy and the kind of music people are listening to in the summer versus the fall versus the winter. So I definitely think, yeah, windows down, maybe even like holiday focused, lighter topics, summer romance, just like lighter.
Ooh, summer romance. Yeah. Working at a label, Kaylin, does this list overall look pretty good to you? Can you think of anything else that y'all might be looking out for when you're thinking like, oh, this could very well be a song of the summer?
I think virality is huge at a label right now. It's probably the main thing. Nothing else that I would really add.
I actually have like it's a question in relation to that, not really in relation to Song of the Summer, but you mentioned virality and I kind of feel like it must be hard to figure out what could go viral, but do you all feel like you have a fairly good grasp on that now? Because, you kind of see how TikTok has worked over the past maybe like 5 years or so.
Yeah, it's hard for sure. One time my boss was like, "What's the key to making a video go viral?" And I was like, I didn't say this to him, but I was thinking, I'm like, if I knew I would be an influencer, I wouldn't.
Yes, girl.
I don't know if I'd be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like the older generations don't understand. You can't make something go viral. It's very lucky.
Yeah.
If somebody tries to sell you the promise that they will make something go viral, they're lying.
Yeah.
Exactly. The longer I've worked, I have more of an idea of what could help you go viral, like something relatable, anything like that people love. Shorter things that grab people's attention spans, just really unique, fun things. So stuff like that is what I lean towards, but sometimes we'll spend so long working on a video and it doesn't do anything. And then other times we're like, just throw that up. Let's see what happens. And it'll blow up at millions of views. So I have an idea, but it doesn't always work how I think it will.
That makes so much sense. I think also like timing is everything. Like you can't predict when a song is going to hit, if it ever hits at all. Like a really good example is, I know somebody popped in Hot to Go by Chapel Roan later on in the doc, but my friends and I were blasting that because I was forcing them to last summer. And the whole time when that song came out, I was like, man, like, people are missing out because it has a good hook. Like she has a dance, like everything is there. All the building blocks are there, but you can't like force people to listen. And I never would have guessed like that it just would have taken a year for everybody to hop on the train. And so now like that's like for a lot of people, that's Song of the Summer for 2024.
Yeah.
But that song came out a whole year ago. And I know the same thing happened with Lizzo's Truth Hurts as well, which is another good example of a song that was released way past when it actually hit.
Yeah, that happens a lot on the label side. We'll run a campaign and we'll put so much money behind it and we're like, nothing worked. And then 6 months, a year later, all of a sudden it starts taking off. And we're like, maybe it did work. Maybe it just needed some time for the algorithm to warm up. Yeah, we're like, we did that. It was us, but it happens a lot.
Taking credit with your boss 6 months later. Hey,
I'm
boss,
like,
yeah,
don't
that was
forget
us.
I started that.
Yeah, I'm glad you still give yourself your roses because I think I would be the same way. It's like, don't forget that like I worked on this campaign.
We were playing the long game, boss. This was all part of the plan.
Exactly.
We knew it wasn't going to take
was.
off until 2024.
So I want to backpedal a little bit and kind of hone in for a second on this third characteristic, which is a song that you hear everywhere you go. So obviously the downside to this is that the song gets overplayed and people get sick of it. They can't stand it. This has happened to me so many times. And then it takes like years and the song, I'll hear like this random song that charted in the summer on the radio. And it's like, oh, actually that wasn't as bad as I remember. I just got sick of hearing it. Like, I was thinking about this with Hey There, Delilah, because it was on the light rock, less talk, adult alternative. I was like, I remember this song being everywhere and I got so sick of it. And then I was listening to it while I was driving and I was like, but you know what? Like that one line, Times Square can't shine as bright as you. Like he kind of cooked, you know, like I get it now 10 years later. But I wanted to like give us some space here to kind of like air any grievances we have with songs that we just could not stand. And I'll kick it off because I think that's only fair. I could not stand Party Rock Anthem, which was the song of the summer in 2011.
Yeah.
I hated this song. I think that do 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 still makes my eye twitch when I hear it.
Yes.
I totally agree with that one. And honestly, just the appearance of the band members was annoying to me too.
Yeah.
The whole hardcore party vibe thing was annoying me. Everything about it was not my vibe.
And then
all.
everyone was like, did you know that they're uncle and nephew? I was like, I don't care.
Yeah, who cares? I don't want to know anything about them.
Right, exactly.
I agree with that one so much. I still don't like it because it was so overplayed. I don't know if I could listen and like it. And then one I'm scared to say because she's so popular right now. And I do love her, but Sabrina Carpenter, Espresso, I cannot stand that song. And it's not even to me that I hear it overplayed. It's that I hear the same like soundbite on TikTok. I think that happens a lot now too.
Yeah.
You don't even get a chance to be sick of the whole song. I don't even want to hear the whole song because I've heard I'm working late because I'm a singer like so many times. So I'm sorry to any Sabrina
I get
fans.
that. I feel the same way about I beg you don't embarrass me, motherfucker.
I love that one though.
Please. But I've just heard it so many times that it's like, okay, I'm done now. Like it was great for the first 3 months. Now
And similarly, I am over Pink Pony Club and Hot to Go at this point. It's because we're hearing it so much.
Everywhere.
Everything needs to be moderated. And we were talking about this on Millennial a couple of weeks ago. There's these conspiracy theories that Spotify is making these songs play more often in all kinds of playlists when it shouldn't be. We're just exhausted. We're burnt out on these songs. I actually did mute Sabrina Carpenter period on Spotify because I was tired of looking at every damn playlist and seeing
how you know it's
Espresso.
real. Yeah. Well, the issue with that too is that like I actually think that Espresso might be still a contender for some song of the summer. I understand why she released it in April. She was headlining Coachella. Very smart to drop a banger on that weekend. But we got like 3 extra months of Espresso, 2 extra months of Espresso. I wonder if like we would not be tired of that song. Some of us might not be tired of it if she had released it in late May, early June. Well, we're going to take a quick break here and then we'll be back with more music talk. So don't go too far. All right. Well, moving right along here, I wanted to talk about what happens if there is no song of the summer, which kind of sounds crazy, but believe it or not, it's actually happened before.
I've heard that fall gets canceled if there's no song of the summer.
There's no song of the summer.
Summer just continues until a song of the summer is decided upon, and then we can move forward in the seasons.
Wow.
I'm here for that.
It's very Groundhog Day. We just keep looping until we pick one. Well, apparently, according to quite a few publications, there was actually no real contender in 2016. And it was basically because there were songs that were popular, but nothing really kind of like bubbled over and dominated over anything else. So, yeah, I know that Kaylin, you have a little point of contention here. You think that there was a song of the summer in 2016?
There definitely was. I'm shocked to hear that there wasn't, because I was actually just at a party the other day and we were talking about all of our favorite songs and stuff. And we started talking about Halsey and the Chainsmokers and how all we listened to in 2016 was Closer. And I just remember that being everywhere. So I Googled it and it came out in the summer of 2016. So I'm wondering, actually, I should have looked it up, like when it started hitting radio and when it became popular.
Yeah.
But I just remember that song being everywhere. So I would say that was the song of the summer.
Yeah.
I do as
I would
well.
take that.
Yeah. Could it just have been a late bloomer, like what we were talking about earlier? These songs come out, it just takes a long time to get traction.
Yeah, maybe it really started cooking in like early fall. I don't. My friend moved to Denver not because of the Chainsmokers at Halsey, but I remember the first time she went out there to check it out was in the fall, and she was like, "Yeah," she's like, and they were playing Chainsmokers and Halsey everywhere in Denver. And even though like I'm not in Boulder, but I feel like they were just like, "Hey, Colorado mention, we'll just play it all over the place."
Yeah.
So she like specifically associates that song with going out to Colorado for the first time.
My theory with there being no song of the summer in 2016 is simply that was the summer we all started playing Pokemon Go. So there was no time to listen to music. It was just the whirling of Pokeballs. That was our soundtrack to the summer.
It was dark times too. Trump got elected. We were all kind of like
later,
in our feelings about that. So
yeah, it is a bummer. I have said that Pokemon Go is the last good thing that happened on Earth. Like that's it. That's the final good thing that happened on Earth. And that was in summer 2016.
Is Pokemon Go still a thing?
There are people who still play it quite a bit. Is it as hot as it was in 2016? No, but it's still got a diehard following, I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
So the other year that there was no song in the summer, and this one seems a little bit more self-explanatory, is in 2020. And it was basically just because we weren't really socializing in large groups. A lot of the bars were closed, depending on what part of the country you were in. Clubs, non-existent. So there were just like no real watering holes or places where we could congregate and rally behind one particular track.
Wasn't that the summer Taylor Swift released Folklore?
Yeah,
I feel like that's very symbolic because that was not a summer bop album.
No, it was perfect for me. I love sad girl bops, so I was there.
Pam
She released it in July. I was like,
Clouds.
She did this specifically for me. Thanks, Queen Taylor.
She did it as a gift to everyone for suffering. But I feel like it wasn't something like, I remember me and my friend, I was like, we're going to have a party, like a socially distanced party in my grandma's backyard, like get ready. And then the album came out and we were like, oh, let's just drink wine and cry. And that's what
sounds
we did.
about right.
But I feel like that sums it up.
Pam, for on this panel at least, you are not the biggest Taylor Swift fan for one, so you can't say that the album was created just for you, because there's a bigger fan here who will say it was created just for her.
My birthday is July 19th. She dropped it on July like 27th or something like that, so it's close enough.
That was for you.
Yeah, she did that for me. Yeah. Okay. See, I have a bigger Taylor fan that's going to back me up here. Well, it's interesting that, we just talked about 2020 because that also kind of feels just like a turning point in general. And I wanted to ask you all if you feel like the idea of Song of the Summer is sort of becoming obsolete for a number of reasons, it seems like. We talked about how one of the characteristics of what makes a Song of the Summer is total domination in communal spaces, but we really don't listen to music in the same way we used to. Before, all we had was, like the radio, maybe like MTV, VH1. But now you have streaming services like Spotify, so you can curate your own experience. You might not even be aware of what's trending amongst the general population if you do that. But then we also have the rise of TikTok to consider as well. So, Kaylin, do you feel like this is our new communal watering hole? Somebody that's kind of in the music business? Is this where we go to
Yes.
congregate? Okay.
Yeah, we have artists that come in and they are so, which is kind of funny to me because I feel like the artists would be more aware, but a lot of them come in and they're just so excited about radio. And they're like, we have to be on radio. We have to be on radio. And our executives will sit them down and be like, yes, but TikTok is the new radio and it will get you way larger of an audience than radio itself. So don't forget about TikTok. That should be the priority. So I do feel like that is kind of what will contribute to the song of the summer moving forward.
That
from
is
here
so
on out, unless it
interesting
disappears.
that artists are
Mhm.
coming in saying, I want to be on the radio. I guess it's because it is the
Yeah.
traditional dream back
Yeah.
even
Yes.
just a few years ago. I mean, that if you heard your song on the radio, you made it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I can understand that too, because like even like when I got into the workforce for journalism, I knew that I was going to go into digital journalism because that was like print was dying. They've been saying print is dying, but it was already dying back then too. It was a really big deal for me to get my name in print in a magazine. Like I never thought
Mhm.
I could still do that. And for it to be a magazine that I have been a big fan of is like, that was a big deal. So I understand why even young artists are still coming in being like, I can't wait for like to hear my song on the radio. You know,
Yeah,
it's kind of like with the
exactly.
Grammys too. Everybody kind of shits on the Grammys and for good reason, but people still want to win the Grammys because it means something. It's like this, it's a mile marker of success historically.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I think also, even if it's younger artists, like you said, the country genre really loves radio and really
Mm.
sees it as big, I would say more than pop and other genres. So I think that has something to do with it too.
So you said that TikTok is big for you all in the marketing side of record labels and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So do you all pay a little bit closer attention to this like song of the summer list that they released last year, for example, when you're planning out your marketing strategy for the next year? Like will you be looking to this more than the Billboard chart, for example?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I would say on my end, because that is what I mainly live and breathe is TikTok. And we're always pitching our artists, like you mentioned, I think you mentioned, or it's in the notes that they have their own song of the summer list on TikTok.
Mhm.
And I'm always encouraging our artists to make those videos that are like, did I just write the new song of the summer in their car? Which I do think is getting a little cringe and
Uh-huh.
dated, but reinventing things like that to get people into that excitement for the song of the summer is a big focus for us.
Interesting. I haven't even seen those
Yeah.
videos, but I guess I'm not
Oh,
on
Oh, good.
Song of
really?
the Summer
I
TikTok.
see them all the time.
Oh, I'll have
What do you
to
think of
search.
them? Honest opinion, Pam.
Well, because
This is market research.
so like I always stop and like listen, but I always kind of feel like if the song is not good, then it
Yeah.
looks especially bad, right?
Yeah.
And so but the thing is like you also have to remember that a lot of these people don't also have like a marketing team behind them. So it
Right.
could just be anybody getting in on this game. And like I respect the hustle because I know it's really hard to get representation and stuff like that. But on the other
Yeah.
hand, like, yeah, if the song's not great, then it's like, ooh, this is not a good look. You know, like you
Mhm.
probably could have figured out a better way to market this, or you could have written a better song.
Hey, that can be
True.
difficult.
Yeah.
Kaylin, do you see labels and artists trying to design songs specifically for TikTok? And by that, I mean making songs shorter or getting to the chorus faster, techniques like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have it. They don't like to. Not. I would say that I've seen artists do it more than the label pushing for it. I have an artist on the label who's really in tune with socials and TikTok, and he kind of changed his whole sound
Hmm.
just to start getting some virality, and it worked.
Oh,
We've even seen there's an artist, I forget his name, like Tucker Bethard, I think, and he makes songs very similar that sound like Morgan Wallen, and I think
okay.
that was done on purpose
Mhm.
because if you look at all his videos, the whole search bar is this Morgan Wallen? Is this Morgan Wallen? And it gets millions of views. So I think that was a technique, honestly.
Yeah.
That
So
makes
I
a
would
lot
say
of
like
sense.
Yeah. From the label side, I haven't seen anyone being like, okay, go in and redo this for TikTok. But the artists who are really in tune with it will. And then also, I've been pushing personally my team for us to have more of an A&R decision of what songs get released as singles to radio based on TikTok.
Hmm.
So we'll listen to an album, and my goal is I'm trying to convince our team for us to be like, hey, we actually think this song will go viral and this should be the radio single. Because right now it kind of works opposite. They have an album, they pick the radio single, and then they come to us and say, market it on TikTok.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm pushing to reverse that process and like tell them, hey, we think this will go viral. This should be the focus.
I mean, I obviously I have to bring Taylor Swift into this because we have Kaylin on the show.
Yes.
I think that's a really good example of a huge artist that does not know how to pick her own singles. And so you do need a team that does that. Like even just looking at the latest single, I don't know why she would pick I Can Do It With a Broken Heart as a single to try. Obviously she's trying for some kind of like sleeper song of the summer success. I don't think you do that with an I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. But when you're that big, you get to do things like choose your own singles. And you probably don't have to listen to an A&R team, but you probably should. Because like, look at what happened with Cruel Summer. Everyone was telling you should have led with that in 2019. And she had a sleeper hit on her hands the whole time. I can't believe that she was even shocked about that when everyone was telling her like, no, girl, this is the hit. Like, this is the one. So.
Yeah, let the people decide for you. I feel like Taylor is notoriously known for picking terrible singles, according to her fans. But I do think she actually did a good job with Anti-Hero from Midnight's because that also had a huge moment on TikTok.
Yeah, dude.
So
yeah,
that was one I was proud of her.
Yeah, but it's funny because it had a huge moment, but it's interesting how like you can kind of see the strategy. And I obviously like, again, I'm not in like the music business world, but I do think it's interesting to see how like you can do all of the right things to create a market strategy. They tried to get people to start, getting in on this trend that they had. And lo and behold, Bejeweled took off and it was like a bigger thing because of a dance.
Yes.
A silly little dance that everybody could do. It was like easy skill level. And like, you can't bottle that. So yeah, it's crazy. Like, not that there's still not like, a role to be played for A&R because they do some great work, but like nowadays with like fans being online and on the online world kind of seeping into this business in a weird sort of way, you just can't predict it as much as you used to.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. We had an artist we were doing all these campaigns for, and then all of a sudden we saw a big spike in her streaming. And we looked, and it was because a potato farmer used her sound in a YouTube shorts. And then all of these potato farmers started using her sound that has nothing to do with potato farming. And the song blew up. And we're like, what? Like, I would never in a million years sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to reach out to a potato farmer and ask them to use her sound. But it happened. So yeah, like that Bejeweled dance just randomly took off. So
That's wild.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's trial and error, right? But that's you can see that for every profession.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as we start to wind down here, I wanted to take a look at some of the actual contenders for Song of the Summer in 2024. And to kick things off, I thought that it would just be smart to look at Billboard's official Song of the Summer chart and also Rolling Stone, who published its own list last week. There's quite a bit of discrepancy here, just going based off of the Billboard chart alone right now. So this is like what's actually trending based on streams, right? You have I Had Some Help, Post Malone featuring Morgan Wallen. He's having a big moment right now, so that makes sense. A bar song, Tipsy by Shabuzi. Not Like Us, Kendrick Lamar. $1 Million Baby, Tommy Richmond. And then Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter rounds out the top 5. And over on Rolling Stone, this is manually picked, right? So this is what their staff thinks is Song of the Summer, but they usually have their pulse on what's trending in music. So, it's worth looking at what they have to say too. So some of the tracks that they have on here, which differ, include Charlie XCX's Von Dutch. They also have Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar and, of course, Espresso. They have a nod to Chappell Roan's Good Luck Babe on here as well. And so it's then there's this Cash Cobain featuring Ice Spice and Bass Swag Fisher remix. So as you can see, there's a little bit of discrepancy here among the two publications, but there is some overlap as well. And I wanted to ask you all if you feel like there's any tracks that are kind of like missing, because I know that there's definitely been some that I've been hearing all over the place that I'm kind of surprised that they're not actually charting.
So I did not look at this list prior to just now, and I see my top 2 Song of the Summer picks are the top 2 in this Billboard list. I Had Some Help and a bar song, Tipsy. Those are the 2 I'm into. I'm also entering like my country era, so I've been digging those more than I normally would. So I'm satisfied. But Pam,
I love those.
What songs do you think are missing?
Well, I wanted actually to throw it to Kaylin first, because you have one of mine written down here, and I'm shocked that this is not on the list.
I'm so shocked, but I've actually only really seen it recently emerge. But Charlie XCX Apple, there's a dance going on TikTok, and it is everywhere I look, all over my page, and I think it might be a contender by the end of the summer.
I think so too. We have a couple more weeks, but it's possible.
Brat only came out in June. Is that possible as to why it hasn't been considered a contender yet? Because like we've been talking about today, it takes some time.
Yeah, I think part of it is because Brat as a whole album is doing particularly well. And as it should, because the album is fairly solid. So when you hear people, especially like music writers, for example, talking about like songs off of Brat, it's usually not just one song. So they're talking about Apple, but they're also talking about Von Dutch, like this Rolling Stone article did. They're also talking about 360, 365 as well. Those are also getting a lot of buzz. So I think that in this case, it's just because there's too many songs, and maybe it's all getting spread out over the top 4 or so.
Got it. I think it's fair to say that Hot to Go or Pink Pony Club will be the song of the summer if we're only picking one. Those would not be my choices, but I just think with how viral those songs have been this summer, and Chappell Roan wasn't she at Lollapalooza last weekend?
It's insane to see how big the crowds are.
Yeah, exactly.
She's at
the
Outside
crowds were
Lands this week out here.
Unreal. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, when you have like Noah Kahan, who also has been having a great few years, is headlining Lollapalooza, and he's like excited to see her set, or like SZA as well. Massive artist is excited to see Chappell Roan's set. That's kind of like when you have a feeling that this is something big. The other song that I would just like pop in here, I'm kind of surprised not to see charting higher, is Billie Eilish's Birds of a Feather, but also Lunch too, because Lunch kind of was starting to have a moment and then it kind of died. So I was a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah, I think Birds of a Feather for sure. And I love your picks, Andrew. Those would be my picks too. I Had Some Help and Tipsy.
I
was at CMA Fest. Yeah. That's been everywhere I go. And I was at CMA Fest this year in Nashville, and I accidentally walked into Shabuzi's set like on the street, and the whole street was shut down. You couldn't get out. And everyone was screaming that song. So I think a bar song could definitely be up there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that he samples like the actual song Tipsy and stuff like that too. I think that that's what really makes this song so easy to get into, because it sounds familiar already.
It's a good point.
Yeah. And it's like, it's such an interesting, like, I feel like, and you can probably speak more to this, Kaylin, than I can, but we're at a really interesting crossroads right now between like how country and hip hop are kind of fusing together. And obviously Cowboy Carter dropped this year as well. The other thing too, to keep in mind, like, you have like these big pop girls, right? That like drop these albums earlier on, like Dua Lipa also dropped an album earlier this year. Taylor dropped Tortured Poets. Beyonce dropped Cowboy Carter, but because they all dropped in the spring, we're not really seeing any of them vie for this top summer spot, right? Because there's just no singles. But I do think that like the trickle down effect of Cowboy Carter is kind of like this, you can kind of see it in the success that Shabuzi's having with a bar song Tipsy, because we are kind of in this interesting era where you are starting to see country and hip hop blend a little bit more. And it's been happening over the course of the last few years, I feel like, but it's really kind of taking center stage in a way that I personally haven't seen it do before.
Yeah, I love it. And I think also to your point about it being a sample, I think catalog's really huge right now, specifically because of TikTok. We're seeing so many songs like resurge just because they're having moments on TikTok. Like songs my younger sister wouldn't have known, she now knows because of TikTok. So I feel like that's something else a lot more artists should take advantage of, is going back and sampling older songs that could have another moment again.
Yeah. I know that like for a while there was that oh my god, what's that guy's name? I can't remember his name, but he had that song Lil Boo Thing, and he was also sampling Best of My Love in that. But I think that was like, you know, the reason why that song was having a moment for a minute is because it does kind of harken back to this sound that we all
Paul Russell
connect to. Yeah, Paul Russell. Although I do think that he fumbled the ball with how long it took for him to clear the sample, and the song would have been bigger if he had released it sooner. I'm sure Kaylin could talk more about that in a way that's more constructive. But
that happens a lot when an artist will start teasing a song and then the label's like, let's release it a year later. And then no one listens to it. And they're like, why didn't it work?
Sam Smith too, Unholy took so long to release.
I've seen Charlie Puth kind of be a victim of that, where he will tease songs for forever, and you go in the comments and people are like, I don't even care anymore. I don't even release it at this point because you've teased us for too long. So there's an art to that for sure.
All right. Well, I think that this is a good place to leave it. So let us know what your song of the summer is or will be. But before we wrap things up, we just wanted to thank you, Kaylin, again for joining us. And I don't think that you told us much about your podcast. So you host Long Live Taylor Pod. And I know we have a lot of Swifties that listen to our show. So can you tell us a little bit about what they can expect if they go and check your show out over there?
Yes. So Long Live Taylor podcast is hosted by me and then my cousin Leanna. So every week we pick a new song. We've been doing the Tortured Poets department lately, and we just kind of analyze it line by line, go over what we think it means, and honestly talk a little bit about our lives and how it relates to what we're going through. And then we always end with a fun little guess the Taylor Swift song game. So if you like Taylor Swift, yeah, thanks. If you like analyzing her music or just want to hear some gossip about 220-something-year-olds, go check it out.
That's awesome. I love that premise. That's a lot of fun. And clearly you have a lot of songs to get through and many more in the future that you'll be able to analyze. So you have a bright future ahead of you.
Thank you.
And Kaylin, where can our listeners find you and or the podcast online?
Yes. So you can find the podcast on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube at Long Live Taylor Pod. And then anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find us. And then if you want to follow me also, my Instagram is Kaylin T. Moody.
Well, thanks so much again, everyone, for listening. We are a newer show, as we've been reminding you all, but that also means that we really need your support. So first up, make sure you're following us in your favorite podcast app. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review over there. This really helps make the show a success. And it's super important, especially in the early days of any podcast. So we appreciate you all for doing that in advance.
And make sure you're following or subscribing to us elsewhere. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram as What the Hype Podcast. On X, we are What the Hype Show. And you can find our website at whatthehypepodcast.com. And if you want to email us about anything, you can do so by writing to whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. There also is a contact form and a voice memo option on whatthehypepodcast.com.
And if you enjoyed this episode or you've enjoyed any of our past episodes, don't forget to tell your friends about What the Hype and make sure you let them know that we're walking through every aspect of pop culture each week. All right, we'll see you all next week for a new episode. That's The Hype on Song of the Summer.
Bye, everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Kaylin.
Bye. Thank you.